Kratos.
People began to say that Kratos from God of War could actually beat Jesus. And as a believer in Jesus, as a follower of Jesus Christ, I could not sit idly by and watch these things be said. I had to go to war against the God of War.
This is
So to understand
the
Kratos,
gospel.
I had to get into the mind of Kratos. I began to think what it would be like to lose all of the loved ones that I have in my life. To have to fight for someone that would manipulate and abuse me. I had to cover myself in white, so I could look the part. I even had to work on my facial structure because, he's got the mean mug. He's got the reverse riz of a god.
Kratos!
Why are you yelling?
I've come for the head of the killer of gods.
Who, Kratos? The Kratos is not here. He's a video game character.
Well, yes, but...
Hold on, hear me out. Hear me out for a second. If you think back to scripture, didn't Jesus say, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee? So if God's being approached by any entity at all to try and face off against him, it's not up to us to fight for Jesus. Jesus will fight his own battles, my dude. And we're going to talk about that today.
What do I do now?
Well, did you say you wanted to learn about Kratos? Alright then, have a seat. Let's begin the lesson.
Well, alright then. I would be down to listen to that.
Alright everybody, it's time that we now discuss the face-off between Kratos and Jesus. But this face-off is not going to go the way that you think it will. We will not be discussing feats, power levels, capabilities, and things of that nature. What? Because that's what people seem to be looking for when it comes to a discussion of Kratos facing off against Jesus. They think it's going to be a power battle. But I think you have something wrong here. It would actually most likely be a discussion between the two. But if you ask me, I would think that at least Kratos' faith would be stirred up to continue to listen to more of what Jesus would have to say. That's why we're not going to be talking about what he is capable of. And look guys, I get it. Kratos has killed so many different gods. And some people are even daring to say because of this kill count that that's enough to justify that Kratos can kill Jesus. But again, we're not focusing on that today because you really don't want me to go down that rabbit hole. Instead, what we're going to be looking at talking about is the actual character of Kratos. The reason for that being is that is mostly what Jesus himself would be speaking to in regards to Kratos, is that of his character. Now, to give a simple and brief breakdown of the origin of Kratos, that way, you guys could just go to YouTube if you want to actually research the origin of Kratos, versus me going over everything that several of you have probably already played, as well as getting into details that if, you're a Christian and you've never played this game, I don't want to redirect you away from what we're actually looking to focus on, which again are the things that impact the character of Kratos. And as we observe these things that impact the character of Kratos, we will then be identifying how Jesus is capable of speaking to those things, particularly by using the Bible itself to speak to these specific cases, okay? Now, let's get into a bit of the origin of Kratos, and that being that Kratos was a man of Sparta.
This is Sparta!
Trained up to be a warrior, going up as far as to be a leader of his own army. However, he got into this situation where he began to lose against a barbarian king who had him on his back about to die. Now, with this barbarian king about to smite him, Kratos calls on Ares to smite all of his enemies so that he would be able to survive. And Ares, being a guy to not do something without getting something in return, tells him, "You must serve me, otherwise I won't do this for you." So Kratos agrees to this oath and begins to fight in servitude to Ares. And this is also the same instance in which Kratos also receives the famed Chaos Blades. Now, this leads to, of course, Kratos operating in servitude to Ares, killing several people, going from town to town to town, killing thousands of people. In this one particular instance, however, where he invades a sacred temple, the last two people he kills inside the temple happen to be his wife and his daughter. Now, this snaps him out of this, of course, bloodlusted, rage-induced coma of looking to constantly kill people under the orders of Ares, to now seeking to alleviate himself from this bondage. Now, at the same time, something I want to point out is that a priestess over this temple cursed him by binding his entire body, grafting all over him the ashes of his dead wife and his dead daughter. That's how we get this famed look of him looking white. He is not, I guess you could say, fully white, as he is depicted as being brown-skinned without the ashes upon his flesh. And even more so, he's voiced solely by black voice actors, which is an amazing thing to identify. But as the story goes on, he does everything that he needs to do to be able to kill Ares. But as the story goes on, he is put in a position where he is being opposed by the other gods as well, and seeks out to kill them as well, going as far as destroying the entirety of the Greek pantheon, and what seems to be, by the end of God of War 3, destroying the entire world. But the story picks up once again in 2018, where he is once again a father of his new son Atreus, and he is now being put in this position to go up against the Norse pantheon. And as we go from the 2018 video game into God of War Ragnarok, we began to see a lot of character development and character change on the behalf of Kratos, where he goes from, instead of seeking to destroy an entire pantheon, to saving the lives of the people and the gods within the pantheon. Now, with that alone, I could very easily see that that might be enough to sway Kratos to listening to Jesus, because Jesus is the embodiment of the Savior of the entire world, by sacrificing himself on the cross and resurrecting to ensure that all of humanity could be saved. And that alone would be something that I could see itching the ear of Kratos. But that would make this a bit too easy in regards to this face-off. So let's dig this a little deeper and go a bit more into the backstory of Kratos. And the first place we could definitely start this off is with, in fact, the loss of his wife and daughter. Man, with this instance of that being what, drives him to want to kill the gods, my daughter points this out, where she says, women can't win. And that's because women constantly suffer tragedy, resulting in men wanting to get revenge. But it's because of the way that men have lived that resulted in them dying in the first place. Otherwise, they wouldn't be put in those positions. So that's the argument she makes, and it actually is kind of funny, because that's what happens to Kratos. What happens to Kratos' wife and his daughter is him choosing to operate in servitude to Ares resulted in Ares using him to kill his own wife and child. But like we see already with the story, what does this do to Kratos? This enhances the bloodlust and the rage to the point of, well, now I want to kill a god who did this to me. I want to end my bondage and my oath to him. Where there's an opportunity where he could have wanted to simply turn over a new leaf, end the oath, go and live a free life and do things differently. Instead he chooses this path of rage and destruction. Now, it's easy for me to say it is just a path of rage and destruction, where on the other hand, this is the only way that Kratos himself could be free. But we know that this is not the actual goal of Kratos, where we see that Kratos attempts to end his own life at the end of the first game, but instead is saved and given the opportunity to instead be a god of war, which he goes into continuing being a person of rage and destruction, going from town to town, destroying things and destroying people. And so we can surmise that he's really just about the bloodlust and the rage and the violence. This is the caricature, this is the trauma that results in this character of Kratos being the way that he is. Now, this impact goes deeper than just, oh, my family died, now I'm going to go and kill and cause destruction. This goes as far as he suffers from nightmares seeing what it is that he has done. But not only to his wife and his daughter, he even has nightmares about the other people's lives who he has taken, seeing them die over and over at his hand, witnessing this destruction.
Brother?
He suffers from this night after night after night. And that would, in fact, drive a person insane. Being that he's exposed to violence on such a regular basis, this would become something that would not only shape his mind to continue to pursue violence, but even think less of his own life and want to take his life. Which is why we see him constantly throughout the first 3 games attempt to do exactly that. And you could even say that's why, where it was prophesied in God of War Ragnarok that Kratos would die at the hands of Thor, that he was okay with that happening. Because the entire time he's been in the games, that's what he's been looking to do. Get my vengeance, die. And he just doesn't seem to die. So, some other factors that we definitely want to take a moment to look at that play a part in the impact to Kratos' character is that of his sibling brother, Deimos. You see, something in his origin is that when he was a child, when he was young, Deimos, of course, was the little brother that partnered him, watched and looked up to his big brother Kratos. But Athena and Ares show up under the orders of Zeus to take a marked child to kill him, because this marked child is prophesied to be the death of Zeus. However, the marked child ends up being Deimos and not Kratos. So they snatch up Deimos. Kratos attempts to fight and save his brother, but loses at a backhand from Ares. Which really makes it, interesting that he goes to Ares for Ares to help him. Now, this, of course, already stirs up that violence and that rage. I need to do what? Become stronger, to protect those that I love, to fight for those that I care about, and I need to do that by whatever means necessary, which in some sense may validate why he chose to serve under Ares, because if he dies, he can't protect his family, and Ares can give him new power, which would make him strong enough to do exactly that. Now, this again, with the relationship between himself and his brother, he's under the impression that his brother is dead. But after venturing, and I believe it goes into God of War 2, he ends up finding his brother in bondage and in captivity. And in finding him, his brother goes to attack him. But his brother goes to attack him in the sense of blaming him, in the sense of saying, "You've forgotten about me. You didn't do anything to help me." Which are the thoughts and the things that plague Kratos already. I wasn't able to protect my brother. I wasn't able to protect my wife and my daughter. Who am I? What am I? The most I'm good for is fighting, and at the end of the day, I deserve to die. That is where we see all of this being illustrated through Kratos and what it is that he goes through throughout these games. But this story goes forward with both of them fighting side by side, fighting against the threat at this moment, which I cannot recall who or what that is, and they defeat him. But they defeat him at the cost of Deimos' life. So now, once again, I'm in a situation where I found my brother once again. My brother blames me, but then my brother ends up not fighting against me anymore, but fighting with me. But I still can't save him in this moment where we're looking to be free. And the impact of that speaks volumes, because again, this is adding to the death toll. This isn't the death toll at the hands of Kratos as much as it is the death toll that impacts the heart and the mind of Kratos. He even had to fight against his own mother, who reveals to him who his biological father is. Because she was in bondage, he goes to see and save her, but then she transforms into a monster and he has to kill her to survive. And in this moment, does he discover that, in fact, and this is extremely important to the topic of Kratos facing off against Jesus, he discovers that his father is, in fact, Zeus. Now, why is this important, this discovery that his father is Zeus? It's because throughout the entirety of the game has Zeus been coming against his life. From the point in which they were children and taking... go even farther. From the point in which he was born, not being there as a father figure in his life. From the point of when Deimos and him were attacked by Ares and Athena. They were attacked under the orders of Zeus himself. When Kratos becomes a god, Zeus schemes against Kratos to the point of actually killing Kratos. And even in him killing Kratos, of course, again, Kratos comes back and fights against his dad and ends up, as we know, killing him. But he's never had a good father-son relationship. There was foreshadowing, in fact, of this problem and this issue that Kratos ends up facing when it comes to Zeus with the relationship between Ares and his son Eros. Why is this important? Because Eros was in fact the oath keeper of the promise that Kratos made to Ares. So Kratos had to go to Eros to technically kill him to be free of his oath. But the thing was, the reason that Eros was an oath keeper was because Ares saw Eros as less than, as not good enough. The best that he was good enough for was for keeping his oaths. So he's constantly, Eros lived a life of suffering. And he actually asked Kratos to please end my life so I can be free of my own bondage, of my oath that I have to him. What does this speak to, right? The significance of this is that in Kratos' upbringing, he doesn't have a father present. He doesn't have that leadership in his life. He doesn't have someone showing him what it means to be a man, showing him what it means to protect your family. It's not simply about God's failing to demonstrate godhood to Kratos. It's a failure of a father showing him fatherhood. And so this impacts the perspective of Kratos and his own worth. I'm not good enough to even live, which leads to him taking his life. And as we see when we look at the God of War game in 2018 that released, right? He has a son now. He has an opportunity to be a father. Pause. Even before that, he had an encounter with a young woman named Pandora. The reason for this is he was put in a position where he had to access Pandora's box to be able to gain the power needed to be able to defeat Zeus. But in encountering Pandora, who is the need to open the box, he develops this father-daughter relationship with Pandora that he didn't get to have with his own daughter. And in determining that the only way to open the box to Pandora is for Pandora to sacrifice herself, he didn't want for Pandora to do that. But he ends up losing her actually becoming that sacrifice, which is again another loss of someone he cared about that he has to go through and live with. And that again impacts his perspective of himself as a father, what it means to operate in fatherhood, and the difference that he can make in the world. That all of that impacts his perspective of himself, of God's, and of everything about reality. And so this goes forward into again his son Atreus. But when you look at the 2018 game, Kratos doesn't call Atreus Atreus. He calls him boy. Now, of course, if I have this correct, in accordance to the Norse culture, there is a significant meaning behind calling, your son boy. It holds a significant meaning, but you can also interpret that to signify the inability for Kratos to emotionally get close to his son. Because at the time of the start of the game, there is no depiction, an illustration, or conversation about Kratos' past. Atreus doesn't know anything about this. And throughout the entirety of the game, though he's trained him how to fight, though he's taught him how to hunt, though he's given him the skills and the assets that he needs to be able to be a capable young man, he never let his son into knowing who he is. So though they have a closeness in the training, they have a distance in their emotional relationship. But see, that's where we get to see the doors opening for Kratos. Because an opportunity for Kratos, though in the first instance, when he shows his Spartan rage, this scares Atreus. It does give Atreus an opportunity to see his dad for, though it's a negative, who he really is. He is a rage-filled person. A rage-filled being. A rage-filled God, if you will. And so, though this is a scary thing, this does open the door for Atreus to ask more questions, to listen more to his father, to focus on him as a person rather than him as a warrior. And this deepens their relationship. Which brings us into God of War Ragnarok, where we not only see Kratos open up about his past in regards to his son, we see him open up about his past to other characters throughout the game.